Good morning, YouTube. JT Serenity Farms prepping here. Well, not actually good morning, YouTube. Good morning, Patriots. So, I have another prepper meeting coming up at the compound with folks that are already in my community and people trying to decide whether they should become part of a group or not. It's a no-brainer if you ask me, but that's me. So, one of these folks who would be a good asset to the community, we asked for topics that we want to discuss at each meeting after we go through some standard and mandatory things. And his question was, what should people stockpile if they're not going to make it to a community? The basics. And that's a very complicated question because he wasn't clear whether you want to stock the basics because you're not going to go to a community, or in the event that you have to wait a little bit to get to the community. So I tried to give him a two-part answer that obviously we all need basics for 6 to 12 months. And that would be stocking all the food that you can to the rafters. Medicines, trying to get as large a supply as you can if you're prescription people. And then just basic first aid elements. Water, which is likely a most important item. 2 gallons minimum per person per day. Where are you going to store that? If you have a stream or a pond or a pool, or say you got to haul it all, you got to purify it all, you got to filter it. It's a daunting task. You can't stack cases of bottled water to the ceiling in a spare room. You can, but once again, back to his original question. If I'm getting ready to join a community or a group and I have my reserve spot there, I'm bringing 3 to 6 months or more of all those items I just mentioned to that location, and it will be stored in my particular living quarters. Now, in our group, everyone brings their own food and water and stuff like that, but then we also have a community stockpile so that we can prepare one meal daily as a unit. Water, I've taken great lengths to try and ensure that I have enough for everyone and the animals, but I do also have streams and ponds, and if we have to haul, we have some healthy, fit individuals. But I've guttered every building on my property to collect water. That may or may not be enough. We'll deal with it at that time. I can only store so much. So, back to the original question again. If you're preparing to bug in and stay where you are regardless of the situation, then you need at least a year's food, water, medicine, tools, supplies, method of self-defense. And then if you're in a big city or an apartment or even a small town surrounded by other folks, good luck keeping it all. That is going to be one of the biggest issues for people who don't live in the middle of nowhere like I do. You got it all. How do you hold it? Now, the obvious security that a group provides will help you with holding on to everything that you've worked extremely hard for, spent a lot of money for, and plan on never having to use, but if we do, we have it. So, if you're planning on bugging out, and as preppers, we should have a good idea something's going down well before the sheeple do, which gives us that window of opportunity to safely get out of Dodge. Might even give us time to make 2 or 3 runs based on what we think the SHTF is going to be, if there was a timeline given, something like that. But we cannot count on that. So I have a small, like a garden size trailer that is always stockpiled and filled with items that I would take if I had to bug out up to my camp, which has also been stockpiled with a much smaller amount of time's worth of supplies. But I'm not naive enough to think where I am that no one is ever going to try and approach my compound. But if there's no vehicles, no electric, no gas, it's a very long walk, 20 miles at least from the nearest city, and knowing people as I do, they're just too fat, dumb, and lazy, and by the time they realize they're screwed, they're screwed. They'll be too weak, too hungry, too thirsty, unprepared for what they're going to be walking into if they're going to try and come take my stuff. So, if you're going to join a group, then the majority of your stockpile needs to be where you're going to go. You have just enough in your home to keep you going until you got to bug out. I would do 3 months supply, because I don't think we have nearly that long before SHTF happens. And then, being awake, should have enough time to take a good majority of that supplies with you when you go. If you're planning on staying in and you live in a city, a town, I don't know what to tell you. That's a bad situation. I don't recommend anyone do it, but I understand some people, they think they have no other alternative because they've just not investigated, asked around, and tried to find out what they need to do. So, that's what we're going to be discussing at our next meeting. I hope it's something you're considering very seriously right now, and then acting on that. Time is getting short. Today's October 1st. We've been hearing it could be a red October. There are a couple different meanings for that. You decide which one it might be. But get prepared, stay safe. But for now, like, share, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, and JT signing off.